As previously discussed, Black Mirror focuses a lot on how screens operate in our society. The first episode explored the political angle of screen technologies, the second episode explored its value as a way of living as well as a form of entertainment, and now we are at the final episode of the series which explores the social potential of screens. Without a doubt, this episode delves into futuristic technology's potential impact on the people in our lives, friends and family, loved ones and enemies. Now of course this is not the only aspect to this episode, so let's pick apart the final episode of Black Mirror Series 1 and analyse the juicy goodness within. The futuristic society this episode depicts is a dreary one for anybody opposing a complete surveillance society. We see almost every character displayed in the episode as an individual implanted with a computer chip, also known as a grain, so they have the ability to record and replay everything they have ever witnessed in their lives. One might see this as a positive thing, considering you never have to forget anything that happened to you in your life ever again, and all criminal activities will be recorded too, so in theory, crime could drop substantially. Now of course, anybody with an ounce of sense will be able to tell you that the ends don't justify the means in a state completely under surveillance control, especially for anybody who knows the works of George Orwell. What this episode really nails on the head, however, is an updated portrayal of how a surveillance society may look and the ethical issues that come with it. After the 9/11 attacks, many Americans were swayed by the government agencies trying to get members of the public chipped in the interest of national security. Of course, this never really took off considering the large opposition to the Bush administration's invasion of the Middle East and the phony advertisements and news stories that would come with it.
We have a Florida family who are really pioneers in a brave new world. They have volunteered to be the first ever to have microchip identification devices implanted into their body.
After 9/11, I was really concerned with the security of my family.
Now, of course, this idea of chips may be nothing more than an afterthought now, but just taking a look at the world around us today, we can see plenty of examples of this surveillance being a part of the individual, even if it's not biologically connected. Let's take smartphones, for example, a device that has the ability to record unprecedented amounts of video and image data and send it across the world with a platform such as Snapchat. If the governments couldn't force us to have chips planted into our heads, they've done a damn good job at placing a camera inside everybody's pockets. We could talk about the fact that recording such content is a personal choice. You certainly don't have to have a smartphone to survive, per se. But at the same time, a lot of young people now find it very difficult to believe that somebody might not even have a smartphone. Somebody who doesn't own one won't benefit from receiving all of the information, pictures, messages, videos, etc. that are being shared amongst their peers and are made to feel left out because of it. Even social situations are no longer made private in case somebody decides to virtue signal to their friends how much of a great time they're having, instead of just simply enjoying the company they're with. This rejection is reflected in the episode's dinner party scene, considering there is a large amount of disbelief at Hallam not having a grain in her brain. In fact, one of the characters immediately presumes her decision to be politically motivated, as if to say somebody who doesn't want their biology altered is an outcast or a radical. The fact that this conversation is even happening is evidence that these chips have been around for a long time, despite the episode not giving us many direct clues as to how long they have been a norm in society. To support this further, Fee's baby even has a grain. It certainly wouldn't have had a choice in whether or not it wanted all of its life recorded, further reinforcing this idea of the grains being normalized. This normalcy is certainly disrupted and challenged at times. One big moment that springs to mind is when Liam is seen staring straight into a mirror with his reflection almost duplicated in the image here. This may be considered nothing more than a moment of self-reflection, but I honestly don't think the show would be that naive. This deliberate decision to distort his reflection shows to me that he is not only looking at himself but his life's history too. His inability to separate himself from all of his past is demonstrated beautifully in this visual metaphor here. This constant reflection on his reputation, speech and decision making shows that this conflict haunts him constantly, even when he has a moment to himself after calling his wife a bitch. This brings me to the main crux of the video surrounding the social issues of a surveillance society, because that is something I feel the episode explores excellently. What we see within the episode is this idea that the government no longer need to set up cameras and other recording devices when the public would happily just buy and control the cameras themselves. We know from Hallam that it is an individual choice to have the chip planted into you, but that choice could lead to a certain amount of regret and exclusion considering you are not complying line with what the rest of society is doing. Two examples of this exclusion are given in the episode. Firstly, when Jonas is attacked by Liam, Hallam tries to call the police. Although it is difficult to make out exactly what is said, the tone of her voice indicates to me that she is unable to get hold of the police simply because she doesn't have a grain to prove what's going on. Secondly, in the airport scene when Liam has to rewind his entire week's witnessed events for security purposes. When I say security purposes, I mean assuming that everyone who wants to travel by plane is a terrorist and their innocence is proved by unloading all their footage of the past week. This idea of guilty until proven innocent, for me, is a very scary thought. The phrase, "if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear," springs to mind when watching the security officer flicking through what could potentially be private material that you wouldn't want some security guard at an airport to look at. Although no substantial evidence is given to suggest this, I think it very likely that somebody without a chip wouldn't be able to board a plane, solely for the reason for pressuring those who don't have a chip to get one. One of the negative aspects of having a grain is a disconnection from reality. Liam is the biggest example of this at multiple points throughout the episode. He probably spends more time looking at the screen built in front of his eyes than he does examining the world around him. This disconnect also leads to a form of social awkwardness that is seen several times throughout too. When he interacts with Lucy after reminding himself of who she is, multiple points when seen chatting to his wife, but the biggest example is that horribly awkward handshake Liam and Jonas share after getting home. I think the decision to make Liam a lawyer was a very clever and interesting one, seeing as they would undoubtedly be the kind of people who would benefit from a system where everybody's vision is recorded 24/7. Redos would not only make up the bulk of their evidence in court cases, but also going back to what I was saying previously about crime prevention, you would think if this system was in place to reduce crime, then why is there a need for lawyers in this supposedly utopian society? I expressed my desire for the show to explore the erosion of privacy with the rise of technology in a previous Black Mirror video. Unfortunately, my prayers were answered in this episode. The documentation and recording of all acts, from the criminal to the sexual, is recorded. It is inexcusable and yet unescapable. Even the most benign elements of life are recorded for the sake of security. Take, for example, the paedophile babysitter situation we see tossed about in the first half of the episode. Something that was seen as a private joke between friends is expressed as an insult to the lady looking after Fee's child because the privacy has been taken away. The parents assumed her guilty from the moment they looked at their baby's recorded memory of being put to bed, and the reality of this hits the babysitter like a ton of bricks purely because she did nothing wrong. Even though this part of the script is rather minimal, it certainly had a very impactful effect when it comes to exploring the removal of privacy from society. Those implanted with the grains no longer can experience sex in the same way for fear that it may not be as exciting or fun as it initially was. We see sex in this society has been reduced to watching the best of your previous sexual moments without any true engagement with the partner, something that is almost masturbatory due to the scopophilic nature of their sex lives. I think this sex scene is the most tragic part of the episode because of how striking this image is. They look hypnotized by their own memories that these individuals are so fascinated by. It seems to me that this, at its core, is nothing more than a distraction for these individuals from the fact that their marriage is no longer what it was. What I think this show is asserting by exploring the erosion of privacy is that all of this could be very easily abused by governments with regards to what laws it makes now that you cannot get away with anything anymore. Surely, if anything, there would be limits on your individual freedoms for fear of always being watched. Freedom of speech is being eroded by the day here in 2016, but imagine what it would be like if simply doing the most simple act may be considered criminal, creating more criminals than crimes. To add yet another layer to the cake, it doesn't put an end to crimes being committed anyway. The grains aren't considered preventative measures, but merely deterrents. This can be no better demonstrated when Liam is warned by the computer chip in his head that driving is a bad idea whilst under the influence of alcohol. For one thing, it's not doing any help by flashing a red warning sign in front of his vision, so he is now even more visually impaired when driving, but also the machine didn't physically stop him from drink driving and assaulting Jonas. This then brings me on to Liam's paranoia of his own social downfall. It inevitably happens after forcing Fee to watch an uncomfortable memory, but throughout the episode he is constantly looking back on his recent memories for slip-ups follow-ups in people's activity, such as the interview and monitoring his wife's behaviour in front of Jonas. This paranoia comes from a conflict between what is just and what is best for his family. He, as a lawyer would, is seeking justice for his wife's adultery when he could have considered the outcome for that poor child by splitting up with Fee. The grain has consumed his personality to a point where he would rather blame his wife for all his social problems instead of the Orwellian system of surveillance that has brought him these ill feelings. This paranoia pushes him past his critical faculties. Even though his car is totaled and his wife's ex-fuck buddy has now been assaulted, he still persists in getting the justice he believes he deserves. Ultimately, Liam has not made his life any better by rooting out his wife's guilt. Due to being too emotionally burdened by his own mind, we are left to guess what happens to his wife and her child. I've been referring to the child as Fee's and not Liam's because he never even finds out who the father of the child is. His loss of truth and lack of satisfaction is brought out best by the colouring of the shots used when Liam wanders around his empty house. The present is heavily contrasted with the past. We see rich oranges, browns and yellows displayed when we look into the past, whilst dull greys and blues are used in the present. Liam then cuts out the chip from his body in the horrifying last moments of the episode, but the reasoning for it is left very much open to interpretation. There are two possible conclusions that I can think of myself. Firstly is that he finally realised the grain was what was making his life a misery and therefore had to remove it. Or was it one last spiteful attempt to remove his wife from his life entirely? Thanks for watching. What do you make of this episode's ending? Comment below where we will continue this discussion.